Folks, hold on to your hats because things just got wild in West Africa. We're talking about Ivory Coast, a place that's usually known for its cocoa and vibrant culture. But today, the headlines are screaming something else entirely. A coup d'etat. Yes, you heard that right. Reports are flooding in from Abidjan, the economic heart of the country, suggesting that soldiers have taken control. The presidential palace is reportedly surrounded, communications are patchy. And the people? Well, they're understandably on edge, trying to figure out what on earth is going on. This isn't just another news blip. This is a major development, a sudden jolt that has sent shockwaves far beyond its borders, making everyone ask, what happened and why now? The situation is still unfolding, changing by the minute, but one thing is clear. Ivory Coast has been thrust into a period of profound uncertainty. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like an isolated incident, a random Tuesday for political upheaval, think again. This isn't just about Ivory Coast. There's a pattern emerging, a kind of political electricity in the air across parts of Africa. You might remember similar news not too long ago from places like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. It seems like a new trend is catching on, and it's not a TikTok dance, unfortunately. It's a trend of military takeovers, of established governments being ousted, and of a deep-seated frustration bubbling to the surface. This latest event in Abidjan feels like another piece in a much larger, more complicated puzzle. The old ways of doing things are being challenged, and the ground beneath the feet of many established leaders is starting to feel a lot less stable than it used to be. They're calling it the Traoré effect. It's a phrase that's being whispered in cafes and shouted in newsrooms. It's named after a young captain in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, who himself came to power through a coup. His actions, his defiance, seem to have lit a spark, inspiring others who feel that their countries need a drastic change, a hard reset. This isn't just a military strategy, it's becoming a symbol for a certain kind of popular discontent, a desire for a new direction, even if that direction comes via the barrel of a gun. It's a quiet revolution that's suddenly not so quiet anymore, and its echoes are now being heard loud and clear on the streets of Abidjan, making everyone wonder if this is just the beginning of something much bigger. So, what exactly is this Traoré effect, and why should you care about a coup in Ivory Coast? Well, because what happens in one part of our interconnected world rarely stays there. These events are reshaping Africa's political landscape, which in turn affects global stability, trade, and the fight against extremism. Understanding this phenomenon is crucial. It's about young populations demanding more, it's about the legacy of colonialism, it's about the influence of global powers, and it's about the very future of democracy in a continent brimming with potential. So buckle up, because we need to break down what this really means for the people of Ivory Coast, for Africa, and indeed, for all of us watching. Alright, let's get into this Traoré effect. Imagine you're tired of the same old song playing on repeat, the one your parents and grandparents listen to. You want something new, something with a different beat, something that speaks to you. That's kind of what the Traoré effect is in African politics right now, at least for some. It's about a new generation, often young military leaders, stepping up and saying the old ways aren't working anymore. They see corruption, they see poverty, they see foreign interference, and they decide that a drastic change is needed, even if it means overthrowing the existing government. It's a bold move, a risky move, but it's one that seems to be resonating with a significant portion of disillusioned populations who feel left behind. So, who is this Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man whose name is now a shorthand for this wave of change? He's currently one of the youngest leaders in the world. In late 2022, at the age of just 34, he led a coup in Burkina Faso, ousting another military leader who had himself seized power only months earlier. Traoré presented himself as a man of action, someone not afraid to challenge the status quo, particularly Burkina Faso's long-standing security and political ties with former colonial power, France. He spoke of sovereignty, of taking control of the nation's destiny, and of fighting the Islamist insurgency that has plagued his country more effectively. His youth and his strong anti-imperialist rhetoric quickly made him a notable figure across the Sahel region and beyond. In Burkina Faso, Traoré's government has made some very public moves. They've pushed out French troops, diversified their international partnerships, notably looking towards countries like Russia for security assistance, and have emphasized a pan-Africanist vision. He talks a lot about self-reliance and dignity, themes that strike a chord with many young Africans who are frustrated with what they perceive as neo-colonial influences and ineffective governance. His supporters see him as a liberator, a patriot who is finally standing up for Burkina Faso's interests. Critics, of course, point to the undemocratic nature of his rise to power, and the potential for increased instability and human rights concerns under military rule, which are valid concerns. This is where the connection to Ivory Coast and other nations comes in. When people in neighboring countries, facing their own set of economic hardships, security challenges, or political stagnation, see someone like Traoré taking decisive, if controversial action, it can be incredibly potent. It plants a seed. It makes them wonder, if he can do it there, why not here? The Traoré effect isn't necessarily about direct coordination between these leaders, it's more about the power of example, the spread of an idea that radical change is possible, and that a new generation can, and perhaps should, take the reins. It's a dangerous idea for established powers, but an incredibly appealing one for those who feel they have nothing left to lose. Now let's be clear, when we talk about coups and political upheaval, it's not just an abstract Game of Thrones. This stuff has real-world consequences for ordinary people. For many in places like Ivory Coast, the news of a military takeover brings a mix of fear and, for some, a sliver of desperate hope. Fear because coups often mean instability, curfews, economic disruption, and the potential for violence. Hope because, for those deeply dissatisfied with the previous government, any change might feel like a chance for something better, a break from corruption or perceived foreign domination. The average person just wants security, a job, food on the table, and a future for their children. Political ideologies often come second to these basic needs. The desire for tangible change is a powerful motivator across the continent. Decades of promises from politicians, often followed by little improvement in daily life, have created a fertile ground for frustration. Young Africans, who make up a huge percentage of the population, are online, they're informed, and they're impatient. They see vast natural resources in their countries, but don't always see the benefits trickling down. So, when figures like Traoré or the new leaders in Ivory Coast emerge promising to clean house, to fight for national interests, and to deliver results quickly, it's understandable why some are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, even if it means a temporary suspension of democratic processes. They are tired of waiting. And then, of course, there's the international angle. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Global powers are watching very, very closely. Russia, for instance, has been increasingly assertive in Africa, offering security assistance, often through groups like the Wagner mercenary outfit or its successors, and political backing to new regimes that are keen to distance themselves from the West. For Russia, it's an opportunity to expand its influence, gain access to resources, and challenge Western dominance on the global stage. They often frame their involvement as a partnership of equals, contrasting it with what they describe as the exploitative relationships of former colonial powers, a narrative that finds traction. On the other side, Western nations, including France and the United States, are understandably concerned. They see decades of investment in promoting democracy and stability potentially going up in smoke. They worry about the rollback of democratic norms, the rise of authoritarianism, and the potential for these new regimes to become unreliable partners in the fight against terrorism or on other global issues. There's a genuine fear that the Traoré effect could lead to a cascade of instability, creating power vacuums that could be exploited by extremist groups or further entrenched by anti-democratic forces. It's a complex geopolitical chess game, and the people of Africa are often the ones caught in the middle of these great power rivalries. So what happens now in Ivory Coast? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The immediate future is likely to be messy. There will be announcements from the new military leaders, probably promising a swift return to order, a fight against corruption, and a new dawn for the nation. There will be condemnations from international bodies like ECOWAS and the African Union, perhaps sanctions. The key thing to watch is how the Ivorian population reacts in the coming days and weeks, and whether the new junta can consolidate its power effectively and peacefully. Will they be able to manage the economy, maintain security, and crucially, will they offer a credible path back to some form of constitutional rule? It's a period of high tension, and what about the rest of Africa? Is this Traoré effect going to sweep across more countries? It's certainly possible. The underlying conditions that fuel these coups, poverty, youth unemployment, corruption, security crises, and a sense of disempowerment, are present in many nations. Leaders across the continent, especially those who have been in power for a long time, or are perceived as being too close to former colonial powers, will be looking over their shoulders. This could lead to a period of increased political volatility in West Africa and potentially beyond. Each country is different, of course, but the appeal of a strong, decisive leader who promises radical change is a powerful force in times of widespread discontent. However, and this is a big however, seizing power is one thing, governing effectively is another entirely. The challenges facing these new military regimes are immense. They inherit all the problems of the governments they overthrew, often with less international support and fewer experienced technocrats. Can they truly tackle deep-rooted corruption? Can they defeat complex insurgencies where others have failed? Can they create sustainable economic growth and provide jobs for their youthful populations? History shows that military juntas often struggle to deliver on their promises, and popular support can quickly fade if tangible improvements aren't seen. The path from coup to stability and prosperity is a very difficult one to navigate successfully. Ultimately, Africa is at a fascinating, if turbulent, crossroads. The Traore effect highlights a deep desire for change, for sovereignty, and for leadership that truly serves the people. But it also brings risks of instability and democratic backsliding. What happens next in Ivory Coast and how the continent responds to these waves of change will be critical in shaping Africa's future. Will this lead to a new era of stronger, more accountable governance, or will it usher in a period of prolonged uncertainty? One thing is for sure, the world needs to pay close attention. Africa is not just a place where things happen, it's a continent actively forging its own destiny, and these are the moments that define it.